Welcome to the Bassline. Gail Seiler is a survivor of deadly hospital protocols during the COVID event. Still undaunted after her harrowing experience, she has become a leader in the COVID truth movement. She has created a growing archive where survivors can share their stories. Here today to share with us her story of survival, we are blessed to have Gail Seiler on the Bassline. Welcome to the Bassline, Gail. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm doing really great. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to
Well,
about this. Hmm.
yeah, I'm so glad that you're here this evening. This is, by the way, a pre-recorded show for those of you out there listening. Um, it is, you know, really an important new subject that we're going to venture into here today, which is a focus on the protocol deaths, because we focused a lot on the harms of the vaccines. We've had so many doctors address what they've observed, the scientific problems of mRNA being injected into the human body, the problems of the lipid nanoparticle, plasmid DNA contamination, all that kind of stuff. We've had lawyers discussing the legal struggle and the legal aspects of this complicated situation. But another aspect of this are the protocol deaths and what was being done in hospitals, how so many lives were lost, and it was being attributed to COVID, but it wasn't necessarily COVID, the disease. It was these protocols that were heinous, it seemed, things that had nothing to do with helping people recover from an illness, things like remdesivir, like destroying people's lungs using ventilators. Um, so many things have been reported around the country, and it's really a huge aspect of this whole thing. I mean, there's so many huge aspects, and the whole thing is just incomprehensible. But this is a very big aspect, and it's something that we've, I'm sure, mentioned previously in various discussions. But today we're really going to focus on this issue of the hospital protocols that killed or nearly killed so many people. So, first of all, Gail, take your time and just tell us your incredible story because you truly have an incredible story in terms of what you survived. Go ahead,
Yes.
please.
So, so, um, so we were me and my husband, me and my family, we were kind of aware of what was going on in the hospitals before I got sick. And, my husband, he used to be an emergency room nurse in Dallas. And prior to that, he was actually a bioweapons, chemical weapons officer in the military. And so when
Wow.
COVID hit, yeah, so when COVID hit, all of his training came together, right? Like
Yeah,
when
seriously.
I got sick. But when COVID hit America, he kept saying this isn't acting like a virus. It's not behaving like a virus. It's behaving like a biological weapon, like he's familiar with in the military. And he was very disturbed by the way people were responding to it. And so he had always been very pro vaccination, but
Mm.
because of all of the things that were happening and the fear mongering and the panic, he was adamant we were not going to. I mean, I don't even take the flu shot, but he always did. But he was adamant, like, we're not taking this shot that was coming out in 2020. And so because he felt there was something wrong with how they were treating patients. When he started seeing the injections, them doing them on TV, he's like, they're not even giving the shot right. There were things that troubled him about the whole thing. And then people started to get, sick, and they started dying from the shot in 2021. So we also had been involved in politics, and so for 10 years. And so we had a lot of connections, and we were always on the peripheral of the medical freedom movement. We'd always worked with those organizations to help get legislation passed. We supported those, although we weren't members of like Texans for Vaccine Choice or that type of thing. We supported what they did. We knew a lot of people
mm,
in the medical freedom movement, and we would go to the
mm,
rallies. The rallies that were really big in 2021. Um, we became very involved in because the mandates hit when
mm,
Biden when Biden rolled out those mandates. We That kind of lit a fire, um, for us to get involved in the medical freedom movement, and we had a plan. We had a plan for if we got sick. Um, we knew where to call to get ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. In hindsight, had I known that I could have it ahead of time, my house would have been stocked, but I didn't know that. So, so I got sick. I got sick on Thanksgiving of 2021. We had a mix of vaccinated and unvaccinated people in our house. We were familiar with the shedding, but not really. I hadn't experienced it. I do believe that we experienced it then because we both got sick. I got sick first, and then my husband also got sick. But so our plan kicked into place. I was going to go get monoclonal antibodies, but I couldn't get them. They wouldn't let me have them. They had changed the criteria to get them because in September of 2021, the Biden administration had taken control of the supply of the antibodies. And
I heard about that.
yeah, and so because Florida and Texas were using, I'm in Texas, right? So Florida and Texas were using them a lot, and they were having great success. And so the Biden administration took control of the supply, and the governors, our governor and the governor in Florida, had made deals with Gilead. I think it was Gilead, or to get the monoclonal antibodies, or maybe it was a different. No, it was a different one. I think a European company. They had made an agreement with to get the antibodies, and then the government came in and stopped that agreement, the federal government, and so like they overstepped. So regardless, they were you weren't going to get them. There were certain criteria that you had to, in order to get it. So I didn't qualify, and I didn't get them, and my oxygen level was dropping, right? So my husband, being a former nurse, he was monitoring me, and we were waiting for the ivermectin and the hydroxychloroquine and other medications to arrive. They had to be mailed because Walgreens wouldn't fill it, so they had to be mailed from Stella Emanuel's, um, from Houston. Basically, they were coming from, and my oxygen hit 77, and my husband was like, "We got to go to the hospital. Like we can't not go to the hospital." And so I didn't want to go. We really didn't want me to go, but um, there was a hospital 2 minutes from my house, Medical City, Plano, Texas, here, where Colonel Allen West had gone the month before, and he got ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and budesonide there, him and his wife. And we knew this because the newspaper, Dallas Morning News, um, had just had a flaming fit about it, right? Like, he took horse medication or whatever, even though he got in the hospital. And but he got better. And so we thought, well, they do that protocol, so we'll take a chance and we'll go there. And my husband printed out copies of the FLCCC protocol, and we went. And yeah, so we went, and they said that we waited a long time in the care. There were a lot of signs that care was not the greatest, but at least we could get the protocol. So so they told my husband they would do that protocol, and then they told him he had to leave. Now I spent 36 hours in the ER. They had not started the protocol. They were upping my oxygen. They kept increasing the oxygen. I didn't realize that that was harming me. I didn't even realize they were doing it. That 36 hours actually. Um, and so I was just trying to hang on to, till I got in the ICU and got my protocol. But they they wouldn't take me up to the ICU because they said that they wouldn't open an ICU unless they had 5 or 6 patients to go up at one time, because to call in staff and to open the ICU from a financial perspective, it it didn't make sense unless they had, I guess, 5 patients or whatever, like, send me somewhere, right? But so eventually, after 36 hours, they must have had enough, and we all went up. When I went up to the ICU, um, I can remember them rolling my bed forward
Mm.
and looking over, because you could see all the rooms had windows, big windows. I could see that the person in the next room to where I was going was already on
Mm.
a vent. There was already somebody there crying, holding their hand, and looking back. I mean, that person was wheeled out dead, like not even hours later, right? So,
Mm.
um, so they pulled me forward, they moved me back into my room, and I waited. I waited, and then I met my doctor, the hospitalist, right, Dr. Quach. He came in, and the first thing he asked me was um, if I was vaccinated. And I said, no, I work from home. I was trying to be polite, right? Like, I wasn't going to say, like, no, I didn't take the death dart. I wasn't going to take the
Right.
death dart. I was like, no, I work from
Right.
home, so it wasn't really necessary. I'm not at a huge risk. And he patted me on the hand, and he literally he said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Seiler, but you're going to die. And the only thing you can get is remdesivir an event, and even then you'll probably die. And I thought, this guy's crazy, crazy.
Mm.
This doctor's
Mhm.
crazy. So I was like, you're fired. I need a new doctor. And I called my husband, and I said, this crazy doctor said I'm gonna die. And he was like, my husband was like, what? I just, yeah, you've only been there, like, this is your second day. Like, there's you're not dying. He was like, you're not dying. And Dr. Quach was like, no, she the only thing that will save her is remdesivir an event. And he said, no. And my husband said, take off your mask. He told me, take off your mask so I can understand you. And so I took off the BiPAP. They had moved me onto a BiPAP. I took off the BiPAP, and I spoke to him, and he's like, no, her voice is strong. She doesn't need a vent. And Dr. Quach was like, well, do you have a medical degree? And he said, as a matter of fact, I do. And he's like, and her voice is
Yeah.
strong, and she doesn't need a vent. And
Mhm.
and he kept saying, she's gonna die. She's going to die. And I knew that they were gaslighting me. Like, I knew. And so I was like, man, if I hear I'm gonna die 10 times a day, God knows what I'll agree to, right? That's what I was thinking. So I told him, I said, I won't even make a decision about an aspirin. It has to go through my husband. My husband has to decide everything, because he's not there, right? So they're not gaslighting him 10 times a day. And he can't be gaslit. My husband cannot be gaslit. I knew that he was going to make decisions that were logical. They were based on logic, not emotion, because I know him. And so I said, every decision has to go through him. I won't make a decision. And then, my daughter started advocating for me too. As soon as she heard they were going to kill her mama, like, she's usually pretty timid, right? Not timid, but she's usually pretty, like, she wants to be liked, and so she's usually really nice. And she turned into me, basically, when they were going to kill me. And so she went to somehow she got into the Clay Clark event that was going on that weekend. And she went around like a crazy person, like telling everybody that they were trying to kill her mom. And and Chad Prather, who he had been running for governor, but he does those. He introduced her to Dr. Richard Bartlett and Dr. Artis. And so I was telling Dr. Quach, we were telling Dr. Quach that we needed budesonide. If we couldn't get ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, we needed budesonide. And Dr. Bartlett, we told him about Dr. Bartlett's protocol, and he said, Dr. Bartlett will never help you because he only helps the easy cases. And that's and you're too far gone. He'll never help you. And I remember he walked out, and I really think this is a God thing. Dr. Quach walked out of my room, and I remember being defeated and thinking, man, Dr. Bartlett, I don't even know Dr. Bartlett. How would we even get a hold of Dr. Bartlett? Like, he wouldn't help me. Like, I don't even know his number. And my daughter sends me a text like 10 minutes later. And I'm like, why is she with Dr. It was a picture of her and Dr. Bartlett together. And she's like, Mom, Dr. Bartlett's going to help us. Mom, Dr. Bartlett's going to help us. I was like, how the hell did she know we were trying to get? So Dr. Bartlett did start helping my family advocate for the budesonide, for the budesonide. Now this is the worst part of it. This whole time I'm being denied food, water, um, people, anybody with me, any kind of advocacy. Um, I'm freezing cold. I don't have a blanket. It's like it. I was literally treated like an animal. Like no mouth care, no washing me up, nothing. And it was really, it actually was pretty disgusting. But this whole time, this is how I'm being treated. And there's this level of cruelty that many of the nurses and the doctors acted upon, right? Because I was unvaccinated. It's the first question they always asked me. They would come in and they would say, well, they would come in and they would say, well, I have some morphine for you for pain. And I was like, I'm not in pain. I don't want it. I had to look at everything that they brought in. Like, okay, um, I, even when they would bring in Tylenol for my fever, right? Like I needed to see it. I needed to see the pills. I needed to see what they were going to put in my IV because I didn't trust them. And when Dr. Quach asked me initially, when he said I was going to die, um, the second time I talked to him, I said, since you gave me um, or since he gave me a
This
diagnosis,
prognosis.
yeah, that I was going to die, a terminal, basically, you gave me a terminal prognosis. It was, somewhat, he said, I'm going to die. I said, Trump signed the Right to Try Act. So I want the right to try ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, budesonide, and I want my priest to be allowed to come in to give me um, my extreme unction, basically, and my final sacraments. I was like, as a Catholic, I have a right to have that. And he said no. He said no to all of it, to all of it. And then he came back a couple days later and he said to me, my husband, he said, I'll let your priest in if you take remdesivir. And so we agreed to get the priest in. And so they gave me one round of remdesivir. So they got their 20 pieces of silver or whatever. And I remember I texted my daughter and I said, it feels like poison in my heart. It felt wrong. It felt like it hurt my heart. It felt like, I tell people, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but going through your veins, it feels like when you touch fiberglass. That's what it kind of felt like going through my veins. And so I remember telling her, texting her and saying, just saying that. And my priest came in the morning and he gave me my sacraments and he blessed the room. And um, he said, "Don't take any more remdesivir." I mean, like, because our priests know what's up, right? They were like, they're always telling people, "Don't take the death dart, don't take the clot shot." Um, so he was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Don't let him turn on the TV, don't let him do anything, just stay in prayer." And that's what I did. I listened to him, but after, so there was, like I said, there was a lot of cruelty, a lot of things happening. My daughter tried to advocate for so many things. My daughter asked them for vitamin C, high dose vitamin C, and they told her that there was a national shortage of vitamin C. And she said, "Well,
Hmm.
I'll bring my mom's vitamin C that she has at home." And they were like, "No, we can't do that. We can't let you. They can let you have at home medications." The very next day, my after I went in the hospital, my medications arrived from Dr. Stella Emanuel, and um, she asked if I could have the ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine that was prescribed to me, and they said no. And I told her, I'm like, "Give it to Dad because he can take it. Like, don't make him wait. Like, he can take it and get better. And if you bring it up here, I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to get it." And so she did end up putting some of the horse paste ivermectin in lotion, and she brought lotion up to me, but they wouldn't let me have it. Like, they just threw it in a corner. And so I knew that was there, and I couldn't get anybody to give it to me. She brought pictures of my grandkids, and I can remember thinking, I never was afraid that I was going to die of COVID, but I did believe wholeheartedly that they were going to murder me. And when my daughter had brought the grandkids pictures, I couldn't even look at them. I couldn't even look at them. I I was like, I mean, being a nana is everything to me, and I just couldn't look at their faces, knowing that I would never see them again. And but when the priest left, I remember the nurse that walked in. I was like, "Give me those pictures. I need those pictures." And I looked at them every day because I was like, somehow, some way, there's. I don't deserve a miracle, but if God gives me a miracle, somehow, some way, I need the strength to make it. and I did. I, as much as I thought I did in my life, there were a lot of things. A lot of times I said no to God. So I was like, I told God, if I get a miracle, man, I'm not going to waste it. I'm not going to waste 1 second. I'm not going to watch TV. I'm not going to do like all these things that are just like a time suck, right? When there's all these major issues that need to be fought. And but the days were ticking by, and I was getting weaker and weaker. And I hit that seventh day without water. I'll tell you one thing people ask me all the time about, they're like, "Well, you were 12 days without food. Didn't that hurt?" It didn't. That part didn't hurt. 7 days without water hurt. I could do like, I mean, this by the seventh day without water, they would bring me water with laxatives in it. And I would say, "I can't drink that. It'll dehydrate me. I'll die. Like, you'll dehydrate me." And I would ask them, like, "If I can have water with laxatives in it, why can't I have water with just water in it? Like, how about we just do water?" And they would be like, "No, you can't have water." I'd be like, "Well, then why can I have a glass of water with laxatives? It doesn't make sense, right?" And so on the seventh day, I had pushed my bedside table a little bit away for something I had to try to like adjust myself, and the water tipped over and it spilled, and I was like, "Oh crap." And and this patient care tech, it was her first day on the job, and she came in and she was like, Miss Gail, she's like, you spilled your water. She's like, do you want me to get you some fresh water? I was like, would you? And would you get me some ice? And she was like, sure. And she came back with like 2 cups of ice and a glass of water. I was like, oh, thank God. And so I drank the water and I was eating the ice. And a nurse walked in and she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, you're nothing by mouth. I'm like, I don't know who told you about that, told you that, because here I am drinking water, by my mouth. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go get you some Ensure. And when she came back, she said the doctor won't let you have that. He said that you can have ice, but you can't have any more water. And so like I would just like let the ice melt to have water, or just like, but at least I could get ice, right? So at least I could survive. And so that was that. And then the whole time my daughter was fighting for TPN, so I could get like
What
new.
was their explanation for denying you water? I mean,
Oh, that
what?
I would aspirate her, like I would aspirate, or I would what. And they did tell the truth to my husband. They told them, in case we have to vent her. And he was like, well, you're never going to vent her. You're never going to vent her. So we let her have water. But yeah, it was just in case because they were trying to get me to a vent. I mean, they were increasing the oxygen and all that. And then somewhere around the 8th day, my husband the whole time, he was trying to get better so he could get me out of there, and he was trying to get things together at home, oxygen, all the things that he needed to take care of me. But around the 8th day, things started to get a little bit escalated, a little bit desperate. And they said to my husband, they said, what do you want us to do when she codes? And I'm like, I'm not going to code, guys. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm going to code, but you're implying I am. And he said, is she going to code? And um, he said, yeah, she
Code meaning.
have a heart attack where my
Mm.
heart stopped. And he said, I want you to resuscitate her. She's a full code. Resuscitate her and bag her. But he said, he told him, I'm never going to give you permission to blanket permission to go ahead and vent her. It's never going to happen. He said, I'm going to come up and I'm going to examine her and tell you what to do. And if I can't examine her, then it's never going to happen. And so the whole time they had me listed as a DNR, a do not resuscitate, and we kept telling them that I was a full code, that I
Mm.
wanted to be resuscitated. And my daughter would call me and she'd say, Mom, they still have you listed as a do not resuscitate. And I would tell the doctors and the nurses, guys, I'm not a DNR. And it's in my record that way too. Patient says she's a full code, but they have me listed as a DNR. And I
Mm.
said, I'm not a DNR. And they would say, yes, you are. The doctor said you are. I'm like, yeah, but I'm saying I'm not. And I have to say I'm a DNR, right? Like I have to say that
Mm.
as the patient. And,
Wow.
right. We even hired an attorney to try to talk to the hospital administration about it. And they wouldn't change it. I mean, so my husband is like, okay, they're trying to kill her. They're definitely trying to kill her. I need to get my shit together here and I need to get it all together. And um, so my daughter was trying to, put pleas out to Patriot owned businesses. If anybody has a oxygen concentrator, somebody did. They brought her an oxygen concentrator and some oxygen. They hooked him up with Synergy Health, and um, the last 4 nights of last 4 days that I was there were very interesting because one male nurse who was, I don't know what his name was. I can't even find it in my records. I can't pinpoint which one it was. But he he came in and he said to me, "You're gonna make." He's the only one that spoke life. Like, he said, "You're gonna make it." He said, "You're gonna make it." He said, "I'm gonna take you off the BiPAP and I'm gonna put you back down on the rebreather." And he said, "Your body will adjust. Just listen to your body. Don't listen to the machines." Um, and so I was a little scared, but he did it. He said, "I'm going to check on you every 15 minutes." He did. He checked on me every 15 minutes. My body did adjust during his shift. My body adjusted to a little bit lower oxygen and not forced hot air. And when the doctor saw that I was on the rebreather, he tried everything he could to get me back on that BiPAP, and I wouldn't do it. I was like, "No, I have adjusted. I'm more comfortable. This is better." And I learned later that that BiPAP will lead you eventually. Your lungs are just like a balloon. You're going to get a pneumothorax. You're going to get a hole in your lung, and they're going to have to put you on a vent or put in chest tubes or whatever. Um, which they already pre-ordered for me, by the way, those chest tubes. They just didn't get a chance to use them. Um, and so he probably helped save my life, that one nurse, just that one nurse
Mm,
doing a good thing.
mm,
But then I had this very very cruel nurse. She was, because I was unvaccinated, like when they give you they would give me Lovanec shots so that I wouldn't get blood clots, right? I don't know, they could have just like let me get up. I would beg to get up, beg for physical therapy because I could see my legs turning gray and my feet turning gray just being in a bed, but they wouldn't allow it. And I couldn't get up on my own. But she would just like plunge the needle in me. I had all these bruises. I was bleeding from things that she was doing. And she was on 3 nights in a row. And I remember on the third night, I texted my daughter and I said, "I am afraid of my night nurse. I think she's going to kill me." And my daughter called. She I didn't know what the nurse's name was because you can't see anything. They don't wear a tag. And so I didn't know what her name was. My daughter my daughter called and she called the floor and she said, "Hey, my mom wants to give some nurses some kudos, but she doesn't know what their names are, who's been taking care of her." And the nurse was like, "Oh, I've been taking care of her the last 3 nights. My name is Rhea Franklin. I don't know who's taking her care of her during the day though, because I'm a travel nurse, blah blah." My daughter was like, "Let me talk. Okay, let me talk to the floor nurse." And when the head nurse got on the phone, my daughter said, "My mom texted me and said she is afraid of her night nurse. My mom is afraid of nothing. My mom has never been afraid of anything in her life. So for my mom to text me that, she's something has to be going on." And she said, "I don't want that woman in my mom's room not one more time tonight." And all I know is I'm sitting there praying, "Please God, I can't make it through another night with this woman. I can't. She's so cruel." And this this male nurse, Isaac, comes walking in and he's like, "We've switched rooms." He's like, "We've switched assignments. So I'm going to be your nurse the rest of the night." He never said why, but I did get a text from my daughter saying that woman won't be back at your room, Mama. And and then the very next day, um, my husband came down with a letter from our lawyer, and they'd been in contact. My daughter and him, and they contacted every single um, politician that I ever helped get elected. And we know who will help and who we won't again. But there were some that helped. There were some that were working legislation, right? So, like, you couldn't isolate a patient. But that legislation, as most legislation does, has holes in it to appease the hospital. So, you you can't isolate a patient unless the doctor writes a special order for 5 days to isolate the patient. So the doctors just write an order. That's what happened to me. He just wrote an order every 5 days saying this patient needs to be isolated for pick a reason, right? It's doctor's choice. And so my husband couldn't get anywhere with that legislation, but he came down on the 11th day I was in there. He came down with that legislation and he tried to get it enforced. And he called me, and for some reason my voicemail picked up and recorded the whole exchange between me and him, so I kept it. um, and he called me and he said, tell them that you want me in the room. I said, I want you, and I want you here. I want you here with me. And he said, they're not letting me. And he said, I'm going to call the sheriff. And so he called 911 and he asked for the sheriff to be dispatched, because the sheriff's job is to, protect your constitutional rights. But they sent some police officers down, and he showed them the bill. They wouldn't enforce it. And so he asked them if they would do a welfare check. And the cop said, um, they said, we don't need to do a welfare check. She's in a hospital. She's fine. She's actually in a hospital. He's like, no, I wouldn't be calling you if she was fine. And so a police officer finally said, I'll do it. And he came up to my room. He stood in the doorway. He allowed um, the one of the abusive nurses, William Fripp, allowed him in the room while he questioned me. And he asked me if he said, your husband wants me to do a welfare check. What should I tell him? I told that cop everything because I had one shot, right? I'm like, this is what's happening. This is how they're treating me. This is, you know, this, like most of the time I'm naked. I don't have, I'm battered at this point. Like I have bruises all over me. But when my husband or the priest was coming, I have a gown and a blanket. When the police officer was coming up, I have a gown and a blanket, and my call light's there when it's not otherwise. And so I told the officer everything, and I told him, I said, if I stay here, they're gonna murder me. They're gonna murder me. I'll die. They're gonna murder me. And he said, oh my God, we don't have a protocol for this. And he left. He left me there. And the nurse just kind of looked, smiled, and shook his head and walked out. And I'm like, oh, crap, I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to die tonight. I had to look at everything that went in my IV even harder. But there was a really great nurse that night. The patient care tech and the nurse were so wonderful. And her name was Grace, and the patient care tech's name was Justice, which I thought was pretty cool. And Justice saw the lotion that my daughter sent. And she's like, hey, do you want me to rub this on your feet and your legs? Because they're so dry. And I was like, would you? I mean, they just took really good care of me. And she rubbed that lotion on multiple times. And then she saw these drinks that my daughter had brought that are supposed to help with your oxygen with the gas exchange. Um, and she saw these and she said, hey, would you like one of these? These look like they would help you. I'm like, really, would you? So like I had two of them, and my oxygen level was getting a little better. So then the next day my husband calls me, and he called me at 7:30 in the morning, and he said, I have everything I need to take care of you. He said, I have contracted with a company who's going to serve as advisors, and I'm going to come and I'm going to take you out home hospice. Do you want to go? And I said, I don't know how you're going to get in here. He said, I don't know either. But if I can get in there, do you want to come home? And I said, yeah, I even if I die at home, I want to come home because I'm going to die here. And so I didn't know how he was going to get in. I didn't, but all I know is at 9:30 in the morning, my husband came walking in that room, and it was the best sight I ever saw. And that's how he got his name Huckleberry. Is as soon as he walked in, I was like, oh my God, there's my Huckleberry. It's like, there's my Huckleberry, because he just boom came in, and he was like, honey, I'm here. and they chased him in the room. They chased him up there, and they were like, "You need to get out. You need to get out." The security guards, um, the nurses, and they were real cocky to him until he was bigger than life in my room. And then they were a little bit afraid because he spun around. He saw me when he walked in. I was naked. I didn't have any covers. I was full of crap. I had bruises all over my body. And he was pissed when he saw that, especially as a former nurse. He was so mad. And as soon as they did that, they were like, "You need to get out of here." And he turned around and he said, "I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to kill my wife. She's coming home with me today. And where's the privacy curtain? Why is she naked in that whole, and everybody that's out in that hallway can see her? And why isn't she cleaned up? You need to clean her up. You need," like, he just started directing them. And like, they literally looked like something out of a Three Stooges skit, because they were running around, bumping into each other, trying to like do everything he was commanding them to do. He doesn't even realize what a command of the room that he had, but he did. And then and we prayed, and he wasn't going anywhere. And then Senator Bob Hall called us, and he said, my daughter got stuck in the hallway because she was like 10 minutes behind him, and she couldn't get through. But it was a good thing because she took all this video of the police, because they called the police. We called the police thinking they would help us. They called the police. Senator Bob Hall called the police. And so there were like 6 police officers in the hallway. And we realized quickly they were not there to help us. They were there to help the hospital keep me there and lure my husband out. And um, so Senator Hall called my husband and he said, "Listen, if they try to get you to leave, I need you to just go peacefully. Don't, don't, we'll find another way if they make you leave." And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay." He said, "Yes, sir." And then when he hung up the phone, he looked at me. He said, "They're going to have to tase me and drag me out of here because I'm not leaving." It's like, "I'm not leaving without you." And 6 hours back and forth. Um, we couldn't, my husband couldn't leave the room. I couldn't, so, and I didn't want to leave, necessarily, um, AMA, right? So they came in at hour 3, they came in with an AMA form. And I said, "I'm not leaving AMA. I'm leaving, I'm leaving because of medical advice, because I know what you're doing is going to kill me. I'm leaving home hospice." We wanted to leave home hospice because if you leave home hospice after getting a terminal diagnosis, um, they're required to help you with certain things. They don't get off the hook for the way that they've treated you, like they would if you left AMA. And so they sent in 2 doctors. I call them the witch doctors because they looked like witch doctors. And they they said, they sent him in to gaslight me. And the woman was, telling me, excuse me, that if I went home, I was going to die. And she said, "He can't manage your oxygen at home. You're on 60 liters of oxygen. He can't manage it." And I looked at my husband and I was like, "Hey, do you have everything you need to take care of me?" And he said, "I do. I do." And and she was like, I've never been able to do that. I don't see how you could do it." And I looked at her. I said, I trust my husband. I said, "And even if I die, at least I will die with him trying to save me instead of being murdered at your hands. And I'm not going to be murdered at your hands." And eventually they brought in another AMA form after 6 hours. And my husband had had enough, and he just crossed everything out and he rewrote it. And the nurse was like, "Hey," and he rewrote it into a home hospice form. That form's gone missing. They don't have it. But I signed it and the head nurse signed it. And then they went totally hands off. They took out all the IVs, and my husband had to go out, get a wheelchair, bring it in. He had brought a small bottle of oxygen. And when and William Fripp, the nurse, he stood at the door tapping his watch at my husband while my husband tried to get me dressed and get me into the chair. I panicked a little bit because of the oxygen, but he got me on that little bottle. And then when he got out, when he started to take me out, my room was directly above the ER, so like he got in so quick. We could have gone out that way, but they were like, "Let me take you a shortcut." And so they led him down this windy hallway to the back service elevator where they take bodies down to the morgue. That's the elevator they took us down. And they had my daughter park the truck where the funeral homes pick up the bodies. And it was really to send
Mm.
me a message. And when we got out there, he said to my daughter, he was like, "Look, if your mom stays here, we'll revive her once, but she's gonna die. She's gonna die." And my daughter, she was like, get behind me, Satan, right? And then he was telling my husband, he said, "Mark my words, she'll be dead. Like she'll be dead tonight, probably by the time you get her home." And my husband looked at him and said, "You better hope she is, because I know my wife. If she lives, and I'm gonna make sure she does, she's never gonna she's never gonna stop coming after you people, ever." He's like, "I know my wife." He's like, this is it. This is it. This is what she's gonna be doing the rest of her life. She's gonna be coming after you people." And
Mm.
and I was like, "Yeah, you tried to kill me, you failed." And because as soon as I felt that sun hit my face, and and my husband got me in that truck, I knew he was gonna save my life. Like I knew it. I That was the first time I felt hope, like I was gonna live. And that's what they did. And so he did take me home, and it wasn't easy. There's a whole nother part of the story. Um,
Right.
like
I
there's
was about to say, this is the first time I ever, asked one question and then the story was like
yeah,
the entirety of the show. But I understand, your story is that in depth. But I
yeah, and
did want to just say we are getting close to the end of the program, so there's a couple other things I definitely want to ask
go
you,
ahead.
but
Yeah,
I mean
no,
it's
go ahead.
important.
You go ahead and ask.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, well, first of all, just quickly, in light of all that you described and all that you survived and have been through, are you taking legal action? Have you taken legal action? And if not, is it something you're considering, or what's the status in terms of any
Yeah.
possible legal follow-up? Because some of this stuff sounds to
Oh, yeah.
definitely fall in the category of malpractice, and I don't
Yeah.
know what the legal terms would be for all the stuff you're describing, but that doesn't sound legal, frankly.
No, like a lot of the things that this is something that we fight all the time is um the PrEP Act, or the PERP Act as we like to call it,
Yeah.
really has given hospitals a level of immunity that is just absolutely crazy. So things that
Mm,
they would even be I mean, like the DNR thing is something they would have been prosecuted. People have been prosecuted for that pre-COVID, right? Like for changing somebody's status from a DNR to, or from a full code to a DNR. That kind of stuff was, even prosecutable. So so it's very difficult to sue a hospital, very difficult. And I learned that early on, right? So early on, almost impossible to get a lawyer to take it, especially in Texas. In Texas, we have like loser pay laws, and we have like these caps of $250,000, but you'll spend 1 million. So no lawyer's going to do it. No lawyer's going to do it. And so, California, where we have cases in California that I think are gonna pan out. I think Kaiser Permanente is gonna fall here in a couple weeks, um, from those cases. But so it depends on the state. In Texas, you don't have a chance. You really don't have a chance in hell of suing a hospital. And so I learned that early on. But also, one of the reasons I'm not suing, other than the fact that most of the lawyers are cowards and won't sue a hospital, is that they also want you to shut up, right? So like even with a settlement, right? Like they always come with a shut up clause, and I can't do that because people are dying. People need the information more than I need money, right? Like I don't need the money. So, but people need the information. We have to get the word out. I can't whistle past the death camps. When I first got out, I started talking about my story right away, and I heard from thousands of people. Thousands of people. That's how I ended up hooking up with former Feds group, and the COVID Humanity Betrayal Memory Project was born, and we've been collecting stories ever since. But there we also I the reason I tell people, tell your story everywhere, tell it on every platform, big and small, because we hear from people. People are still going through this today, where I hear from them. I've had 6 calls this week, um, where they're like, I'm in a hospital. They want to give me remdesivir, and it's not just the remdesivir. It's you got to be aware of Paxlovid and um, all of the tocilizumab, all of it. It's not just the remdesivir, and so I to have to be quiet about what's going on in the hospitals, the intentional murder of people. They can call it stealth euthanasia or whatever they want to call it, but the intentional murdering of patients, it's directly related to the shots, right? So like the higher the body count, the more people are going to run out and get that shot. And we have a lot of victims like that. They didn't know their husbands were killed intentionally in the hospital, so they ran out and got the shot because they were afraid, and now they're vaccine injured, they're shot injured. So it's such a cycle. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so for me, naming them, shaming them, and being very public about it, I think is more important than suing them. Because what happens when you
Mm.
sue? And I know there's a lot of people out there hoping to sue, and that I'm not. That's fine. I think they deserve to be sued as well, although they really deserve criminal action. But the lawsuits are good too. But I think it is more important to expose them than to sue them and have to be quiet about it. That's my
Yeah, as a matter, yeah, I think it's a powerful point.
Yeah, right. Because
And, and
how can you defeat the devil from your basement? I mean, like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, right?
as a matter of fact, I've been involved with the New York City Medical Freedom Alliance for the past few months. I was a keynote speaker at an event at the end of September, and I've been attending meetings ever since. And they host protests, or they organize a weekly protest outside of Mount Sinai Hospital,
Uh-huh.
which in general, I went to one at the end of the summer, and I can't really go to these protests in general because they're on Thursdays, and I have kids, and I just have to take my kids home and do homework and all that kind of stuff. But for anyone who can attend these protests, they start in the late afternoon, I think like around 5 o'clock, but right outside of Mount Sinai. And it's along similar grounds that, I mean, there are folks protesting, basically saying that their loved ones are being held hostage.
Yeah.
People, they're being brought into the medical facility, and then they're just being given various protocols without any sort of thing that you would call informed consent. They're being isolated from their families. They're being not allowed to leave when they're saying, look, I want to leave now. They're not being allowed to. It seems like they're being, run through the ringer for their insurance, or to maximize them as sort
Oh,
of like
yeah.
a thing that you can profit off of. So, I think this is a thing that needs to happen more, which is take the protest right to the hospital.
Right. I mean, and we have a group in California that does that outside of every Friday, either outside of Clovis Community or St. Agnes, and then on Thursdays they're outside of Kaiser Permanente in Fresno there, and that's why we do our Saturday night spaces. So people should
Right.
follow.
So that's actually, so we're really like running out of time here to try to fit into the 1 hour time frame. But I would love for you to give us a 1 minute introduction to an invitation to your Saturday spaces, which
Yeah.
are phenomenal.
Saturday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you follow at chbmp.org or follow Huckleberry's wife, that's me, and you'll see the notification for it. But every Saturday, we it's called COVID related crimes against humanity. Eyewitnesses speak out. It's really designed for, we want eyewitnesses of COVID related crimes to come on and tell their stories. Shot,
Right.
injured, protocols, especially protocols, because people don't understand that it's still happening, that it has happened, and the extent of which it's happening. You can also go and listen to our past spaces to see what it's all about. You're on our spaces almost every Saturday, Jeremiah. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so come on. It has reached a lot of people. And if you do have a story, you can go to the betrayal project.org and document your story and do an interview with one of our interviewers. We have to get these stories out.
Say that one more time so people
Uh,
know where to
yeah,
go.
so it's called betrayalproject.org. Betrayalproject.org.
Betrayalproject.org. O-R-G.
And you can see all this. You can look it up by state too and see like all the stories in your state. We have
Yeah,
25
that's powerful stuff.
commonalities. Yeah, we have the 25 commonalities that are out there. When people read those, they're like, wow, I have they're like, they relate to them, and that's how a lot of people find us, and they're like, wow, I thought many people think their loved one was murdered in the hospital. They're just not sure. They read those 25 commonalities, they get the medical records or whatever, and they're once they start talking to other people, they're like, yeah, it's validated for them. Especially when you talk to survivors, we know there's 72 survivors that we found out of the 1,300 that have put their cases in. Survivors know what happened on the inside, and we need survivors to tell their story as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Gail. We're pretty much out of time. But I want to say, first of all, I have to apologize to you, Gail. I'm forced to host a conflicting space this Saturday, but it starts at 9 p.m.
Okay.
So I'm gonna definitely stop in like I always do, and then there's gonna be a serious initiative led by Dr. Sansone. I was invited by Dr. Andrew Zhivjets to
Oh,
try to
okay.
get to rally some doctors because they were trying to gather affidavits for a serious initiative in Florida. So,
Oh,
I
wow.
hate to host a conflicting space, but
Yeah.
I also think it's good that that multiple strong spaces are happening at
Yes.
the same time. And it's
Yeah.
happened before where I've had to host a space because, Dr. Ben Marble, he has
Stop the
kind
thoughts.
of yeah, and he has an erratic schedule. So sometimes we'll say, hey, let's host a space.
Yeah.
And if it conflicts sometimes with another good space such as yours, it's like it's unfortunate on the
Sure.
one hand, but it's good that more than one group of people are addressing this,
Right.
so
Exactly.
consistently. So
Exactly.
by the way, everyone, you know how to support this program. Please go to my Substack, become a free subscriber, become a paid subscriber if you can. Today is Bandcamp Friday. That's the sort of online record store that hosts my music. So go to jeremiahhosea.com, jeremiahhosea.com. Buy a song like the theme song for this show for just $1. It's the season for giving or whatever, and it's just a nice way to make a little contribution to the show and let me know that you're listening. Um, Also, of course, I'm a chess teacher, so get a chess lesson for a young person in your family or for yourself. I teach people of all ages and all experience levels, so you don't have to be a kid. I don't just teach children. I've taught the elderly. It's a great way to fend off dementia
That's great.
and other degenerative diseases of the mind. It's actually good for your health. It's a proven scientific fact. And the Chess World Championship is happening right now, which is incredibly exciting. Please tune in. It's Ding Liren, the defending champion, against the incredible rising star from India, Gukesh Damaraju. So that's incredible chess that's happening right now. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll see you next week. I'm going to have my station mate, Danny Katz, as a guest, another medical freedom person who comes from a very interesting perspective. So looking forward to that. And thank you so much for being here, Gail. Keep up all the great work, and we will definitely be in touch. Thank you.